Welcome to the season finale of Inside the Zone, Komets hockey style, alongside Komets beat writer Blake Sebring of the News Sentinel. I'm Glenn Marini, and I'm going to start out with the most basic question, but it could be a 17 to 18 point question. What went wrong this season?
How about what went right? Okay, back to your original question.
Yeah, well, I do. We'll get into
tough.
Yeah, we'll get into what I think what went right. I think people maybe overreact to the fact that they didn't make the playoffs. It's the first year in the ECHL, what they learned from that. But most people are pointing fingers to what went wrong. And in your eyes,
I think the number one thing was the power play. I mean, they didn't have one. And how many one-goal games did they lose? It was remarkable. And it seemed like the higher quality you get, as in the NHL, everything's a one-goal game. In the ECHL, more than half the games were one-goal games. And they didn't handle that well. Part of that's because they had such a young defense, and they didn't have any stud defensemen who could really move the puck and help with the offense. But I really blame the power play, which never got any better from day one. It never even had a hot streak of 2 or 3 games in a row. It was just always bad. No matter what they tried or who they tried, it was always bad.
One of the things that we talked about before the season was the speed of this league. Every time you kind of move up, you expect the speed to be more. But we were talking off camera, and one of the things that caught us off guard, I think, this year was the size. I mean, really, there's not a lot of space for small guys in the ECHL, it turns out.
No, and where you have to find that is in your rookies. Because everybody who's over 6 foot and has any skill level at all has already been signed by the AHL. And maybe not even to an NHL contract. It might just be free agents that the AHL teams buy or sign to fill out their rosters, because not every person on an AHL team is an NHL contracted player. They are a lot of free agents too.
And in a piece that you wrote after the final game this Saturday, you said Al commented on the size and speed of the league were the biggest detriments to this team.
Again, I think a lot of that early on hurt the power play. Again, before Ciro got here, who was standing in front? Josh Britton did a pretty good job of it when he was here, but he wasn't here that long. And your forwards just didn't have any size, and your defense didn't have any size. Henley was big. Maggio was big. Maggio played big.
Yeah.
But when he was gone, I mean, when they lost Kenny Ryder and Daniel Maggio within 2 days of each other at the start of February, at that point, they were 3 points out, and they were talking about making a run. They were 6 points out, talking about making a run at Cincinnati for first place. Those two guys get called up. They almost immediately lose 6 games in a row. The season's over. That was it, right there.
How much do you take away from this as a learning experience for the Komets, not only on the ice, but for guys like David Franke and Al Sims? How much do you chalk this up to a learning experience that will help them in the long run next season and beyond?
Well, I think the Komets, if you have one affiliate, you are not, in this league, you are not a comeback team. You can't make the adjustments in the ECHL the way you made the adjustments to go sign a Mike Vascavu, to get a Justin Hodgman, to do some of those things that they did during those seasons in the second half to find the one critical piece. Because there's not just one critical piece in ECHL, because as someone said to me a couple weeks ago, you always have to be recruiting as if your best player is going to be gone tomorrow, because they more likely will be. If somebody's having a good year and if they're any size at all, they're going to be gone. So I think the Komets learned this year that they have to go try to get a bunch of first-line forwards that are the third and fourth and fifth guys. If you get ones and twos, they're going to be gone. If you get ones and twos in your defensive core, they're going to be gone. That's what happened with Maggio. They're not going to stick around because somebody's going to have a hole in the AHL and they're going to pick them up, and there's nothing you can do about it. But you can have 5 or 6 number 3s who maybe will stick around and play really well, and maybe they'll develop and grow together. You got to look at it that way. Fort Wayne is so in tune to trying to go get the number 1s, the number 2s. Same with the goalie with Kenny. Kenny was great. Nobody ever thought he'd get called up from where he was at the time, because New York had 5 guys. Well, somebody got hurt. He got a chance, and he made the most of it. He's really playing well up there.
And it seems like at the beginning we were wondering whether they even needed one affiliation, but that's kind of flipped because you saw Cincinnati with 2 affiliations this year. You saw Reading, who was awesome, with 2 affiliations this year, and maybe changing the philosophy of, gosh, we wondered if we needed 1. Now we think maybe we need 2.
Yeah, but that's going to be hard too. That's going to be brutally hard for the Komets because if you have 2, your number one focus is developing players. It is not necessarily winning. It means you're going to have affiliated guys on your power play, not necessarily the best players on your number one power play unit. Same thing with penalty kill. Those guys are going to get the ice time. It doesn't mean that they're the best players on the team. It means that they need to develop. And that's hard to deal with here. That's going to drive the Frankies nuts, and it's going to drive some of the fans nuts.
How difficult was that for the Komets to adapt to the up and down nature? The NHL lockout certainly didn't help.
No.
But the up and down nature of the roster night in and night out based on who was going up to the JM Risk especially was going
like
up
I said,
and down.
when you lose Ryder and Maggio, arguably your 2 best players at that point within a day of each other, how do you respond to that? There's no way that the Komets, with no expansion draft, could respond to that. I mean, it's not like you can go out and find a 6'3" defenseman at that time of the year who can move the puck and play big and take penalties and kill penalties. You know, I mean, those players are not out there. They're already signed. And if you go look at the college guys. Those guys already have agents. The agents are telling them, why would I go to Double-A hockey? I mean, why would you take a chance on getting hurt to go to Double-A hockey when you know next year you're going to go to Triple-A camp right off the bat?
Yeah, one of the big question marks in the offseason is what the Komets are going to do with Al Sims. I know they've kind of been mum as far as what they're going to be doing. What do you anticipate the Komets doing? Because it was my understanding that if they made the playoffs, this contract would roll over for next year. That obviously didn't happen. So what's the status with Al Sims? Do you expect him back, and what are the Komets going to do?
I expect him back. And I look at it this way. If you opened up the coaching search now and got rid of Al, where are you going to find a coach who has 4 championships in 5 years? Or 4 championships in the last 6 years? Where are you going to find somebody with a better resume than that? And you're not. Now, part of what I think they'll do is I think they'll hire an assistant coach or an associate coach, somebody who, maybe, like a Gary Graham, if Gary's teams wins the Central SPHL and if Gary wants to move back up, or somebody with, who's not just starting in coaching. It'll be somebody who's, and I don't mean this to sound derogatory to Colin at all, because I think Colin's going to be an absolutely fantastic coach, and I think he'll coach the Komets someday. But it's going to be somebody who's got some tread on the tires, some wear on the tires.
It'd be easier for them to step in immediately.
Yeah, but I personally think Colin could step in immediately. I don't think the Frankies will do that. I don't think they'll ever go with a rookie head coach again. And I can understand that. I mean, I personally believe Colin might be the exception. But those exceptions are 1 in 100, and do you really want to gamble on that when, you're coming off a losing season, which they don't do very well, and do very often either.
Yeah, and a quote from Al Sims in an article that you wrote recently, he said he expects less than half of this roster to be back next year. So who are some of the guys? Because I know they're cutting one of the veteran positions.
No, they're going to go with 4 still.
Okay.
But one of them can be an assistant coach too.
Okay.
Which I'm assuming is salary cap relief, which is really irrelevant.
But one of the things that really comes into play this year is a guy like Haley Schrock will now have his games in. He'll be a vested veteran. There are going to be some decisions that need to be made. Where do you see the Komets starting in the offseason? Who do you expect to be back? Who do you expect to be gone?
Boy, that's a hard one. You got to remember about Haley too. His hand was broken all last summer. He didn't get to work out on that. And there's somebody I think, an assistant coach working with him could really make a difference. But that said, that's going to be the one. He and Brett Smith are the 2 most critical decisions you have to make this summer. Those are the heartbreaking ones that you're going to have to make. Do you bring them back or not? And I have no idea what they'll do. The fact that we're even making that a question tells you how tough this is going to be because of what those 2 have meant to the Komets. I think you bring back Max Sierzinski, and he's going to be a veteran. there's one of your 4 veteran spots. And I tell you why. Because he's 6'4", 225, and he's not going up to the AHL. You have to have that size and somebody who's going to be there all year to provide that size and help your power play. You have to have that. And I think he showed through these last 30 games or some games that he scored 10 goals. You know, you prorate that, he's going to score 30 goals for you. That's hard to find.